Today is Tuesday, April 10th, 2018. My name is Edna Sussman. I'm a reference librarian at the Half Hollow Hills Community Library here on Long Island. We're interviewing Tess Pierce Garber, a World War II U.S. Marine Corps veteran, as part of our Veterans Testimonial Project and in collaboration with the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. Thank you so much, Tess, for being willing to participate in our project and for your service. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Tess, where and when were you born?
Niagara Falls, New York, August 29th, 1923.
And who were your parents, their names, and what did they do?
My mother was Anna Pierce. My father was Louis Pierce. They both emigrated to this country, this wonderful country, from Russia, where their families had suffered through the pogroms. And both of their families, even though they didn't know each other at the time, but both of their families had took a beating.
Mm-hmm. Do you know when they immigrated to the United States?
It was, as far as I can tell, it would have been about 1912, thereabouts.
And then they met in America.
They met in America.
Okay. And what were their occupations?
My father ran a small grocery store. My mother helped him in it, although she went to school as soon as she got here. She went to night school because her father had warned the 3 children that survived to come here that he never wanted to hear the Russian language again.
Oh, so at home they spoke English?
Yes.
Did you have any siblings? What were their names and genders?
My oldest brother was Manny Pierce. He ended up being a captain in the Signal Corps of the Army.
Wow. During what period of time?
He went in just before Pearl Harbor. In fact, he was President Roosevelt had started a conscription program to start getting an army together, and he was conscripted for 1 year, which would have been up in February, but December 7th changed everything. That was Pearl Harbor Day, and instead of coming home, he was in for 5 years.
Wow.
But he ended up being sent to the European Theater of Operations, and he came out a captain.
Wow. So he survived.
He survived in one piece.
Thank God. And your other siblings? Who were they?
My youngest brother was Harold Pierce. Harold was, he ended up volunteering into the Army, and he was sent to the Philippines, the other theater of operations, and he became an air traffic controller.
For the, which?
The Army.
The Army. And anyone else?
My younger sister, Lucille, was too young to get into the service, but my parents so imbued us with the concept of our good fortune in being a part of this country that I guess it's no surprise that 3 of us entered the service.
Amazing.
And she would have, but she was too young.
She was too young. That's fantastic. Wow. So what did you do before you entered the service?
I went to a high school that prepared us to go to work, and I chose the field of retailing. It was a very comprehensive course called the Cooperative Retailing course, at which time we worked 2 weeks and went to school 2 weeks. I found that to be very rewarding because it was right at the tail end of the Depression, and owning money was certainly important. And college was not in the picture for any of us because of the Depression. So going to taking that course, part of it was that we would be interviewed by every store in Cleveland that wanted to use our services. At the end of the year, graduation time, they were all invited to come to our high school. They had tables set up for each different store, and we had to interview with every single one of them.
Wow.
After being taught how to dress and how to behave during an interview.
When did you get to Cleveland? How old were you when you left?
I was 5 years old.
Niagara Falls you left, and the family moved to Cleveland.
Right.
I see. Okay.
So
you interviewed with each store?
Right, and I was very fortunate. I was hired by Halley Brothers, a private upscale department store, comparable to a Neiman Marcus today.
Wow.
It was a rude awakening for me because clothes and shoes and dresses, they would cost under $5. Now my mother went out and spent $7.95 to give me a nice dress to be interviewed in.
Wow. Wow.
And working at Halle's, we were required as part of our co-op training to serve in each different department.
Oh, learn
So
everything.
we got a little taste of everything. So we started out as an inspector who would inspect and compare the sales ticket to what was in the bag. And then we became a packer, learned to wrap beautiful gifts. And then after serving in each different department, I finally chose cosmetics.
Oh, okay.
It was very exciting for me. I thought it was a wonderful place to be
How long did you work there?
until I entered service.
Oh.
So that was, let's see, I started when I was 20. And no, I had been working there for a year when I was old enough to join the service.
Okay. So you served in the Marine Corps. Now,
Right.
you enlisted in the Marine Corps.
I enlisted.
Why did you pick the Marine Corps?
I was an ardent Zionist when I was a teenager. I guess some things I learned from my parents, I knew it was important that the Jewish people have their own homeland. So I used to stand on street corners with a JNF box collecting monies, as did many other children, so that we could raise enough money to buy, not steal, the property there. At any rate, I finally got to the point where I knew that I wanted to go to, I belonged to an AZA group that used to, our group leader wanted us to know the importance of becoming a chalutz, or a pioneer.
AZA stands for what?
American Zionism Association,
Okay.
I believe. And I thought that was a great idea, and that was my goal when I got out of high school. But again, everything changed with Pearl Harbor, and when my brother was already overseas at the time, and I said, you know what, I want to do something to help the war effort here. And I knew that the women in Palestine were fighting for their country. I felt, why couldn't we? So eventually they started the wax. So very excited, I went down to the wave office to get all my papers ready for when I would be old enough to go. But I found out that their age limit was 21. And at the age of 19, that seemed like a long distance away. So when I was going to be 20, they had started the waves and the spars for the Navy and the Coast Guard. So on my lunch hour, I went down to their office and I saw my First Lady Marine. And her first question to me is the same as yours. Why do you want to join the Navy?
The Marines.
No, she said, because I had come there to join the Navy. Their age limit was 20, not 21.
I see.
So she said, I said the Army wouldn't take me because I wasn't old enough. So, but the Navy's age limit is 20. She says, well, so is the Marines, and the Marines are closer to the Army than the Navy. So I chose the Marines.
Oh, wow. Okay. And your brother was in the Army.
Yes, both brothers.
What happened when you departed for training camp? Well, first of all, what date and year was that?
I went down on my birthday and went through both the physical and the written test and passed.
What year was that?
That was 1943.
Okay.
So, what did
You went down on your birthday to
oh, right.
get the physical.
And I forgot my train of thought.
Sorry. So this is when you departed for training camp.
Oh, when I took my training, I passed everything, but they turned me down because I was 6 pounds overweight.
Oh.
I lost that 6 pounds in 1 week.
Wow.
I went back the following Monday, and they accepted me.
Wow.
And then it was a question of waiting for our orders to come. There were 8 other women who were accepted the same day I was, and we kind of kept in touch with each other until we all finally got our orders on November 1st.
Okay.
So, November 2nd, I believe it was. So we met at the train station, traveled together. It was a very long train ride to North Carolina.
From Cleveland.
From Cleveland to North Carolina, Camp Lejeune was the destination. I believe it's in New River, North Carolina.
Okay.
We were met by buses. They took us to the area that we were going to. The women Marines were trained in Area 1. Mm-hmm. The other 4 or 5 areas were for men Marines only. No mixing or mingling.
Okay, good.
So we got in. That first day was a very, very long day. We were all tired and hungry, but finally we were taken to the mess hall after we were taught to stand in platoon formation, 30 women to a platoon, and we got our uniforms, and we saw where we were going to be billeted. And then we were taken to the mess hall.
Okay.
I was in for a rude awakening there.
Why is that?
I was brought up in a kosher home, and they were serving pork chops.
Oh, wow. Oh, gee.
I thought to myself, of all the arguments my parents used to try to talk me out of going, they never thought of that one, and neither did I.
No, wow.
So anyway,
what did you do?
I found that I could get by. I ate everything but the meat.
Okay.
And they also always had peanut butter and jelly or baked beans or something that I could sustain with.
Okay.
So, and then we were sent to the barracks to sleep, and I was assigned to an upper bunk. It was scary.
Yeah.
But I was so tired, I just dropped off to sleep, never moved an inch. But I found it was really nice. You had your own private little space up there.
Up there.
So
how many women in the barracks? About?
There, in each of the buildings, and there were maybe about a half a dozen buildings, it was an all-woman campus.
Oh.
We had 4 squad rooms. There were 90 women to a squad room, and they had upper and lower bunks. Mm-hmm. That's how they accommodated so many.
So 90 women in one huge room?
Yes.
Wow. So I guess 45 beds. Each was a bunk.
Right.
That's
a double bunk.
You didn't eat there. You had
No. That was our living quarters. Each squad room had a latrine and a shower room that were individualized, as opposed to boot camp where everything was open.
Oh.
Which I know was hard for a lot of women, but we belonged to a temple in Cleveland that had a health club, and so it didn't faze me in the least to go into an open shower. We only went on women's nights to swim, and people would walk around in every condition. Mm-hmm. So it didn't shock me at all to be naked in front of other people.
Yeah.
But it was an experience. Some people really had a hard time adjusting to that. Huh. But they also had a laundry for one floor. Each floor had a laundry. The main floor had a lounge and something else. I guess the officers' offices.
They lived separate. The officers lived separately.
They did not live in our squad room.
Now this was after boot camp?
This was boot camp.
This was boot camp. This was your training.
Yeah.
Do you remember your instructors, what they were like?
I remember our drill instructor, because he was very creative. He taught us a lot of fancy steps. We were one of the best platoons.
Oh, great.
And when we had parades, we showed off our new skills.
Oh, okay. How was it adjusting to life in the Marines? I mean, other than the food, which took so much.
I think the most important thing I had to learn was following orders. It was made very clear to us that we were responsible for everything on the bulletin board. Mm. So the first week, I saw my name on the bulletin board for 4 hours EPD. That was extra police duty.
Oh.
But the one thing you learn is you don't ask, you do.
How did you know what to do?
Well, we were told we had to mow the lawn for 4 hours where there was no lawn, with an old-fashioned lawnmower, a manual lawnmower. Oh. So I managed. The only difficult part about that, really, not only were my hands blistered, because I had never done anything like that before. I always lived in apartments. But the men Marines who were in other barracks, other areas, but there was a borderline, and they were on their side of the border, but they would yell across, "That's what you joined the Marine for?"
Oh, we're making kind of fun, yeah.
But Like everything, I found out much later that there was a typographical error, and I worked off somebody else's EPD. So that was a lesson in following orders, boy.
What else did they have you do?
Well, another order that I didn't, the only other one that I really couldn't acclimate to was that we were told we had to go to church on Sunday morning.
Oh.
So I really believed that I was not allowed in the church.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally got up the nerve to go into the commanding officer, and I told her this, and she said, well, you were in the 8th Battalion. That means 7 battalions went through before you. Nobody ever complained. So I said, I can only tell you the way I was raised. She said, well, take it under advisement and get back to you. Friday, she called me to the office, and she said, one of the first things we saw on the bulletin board was there would be a GI party on Friday night. We thought that was to welcome us.
Uh-huh.
No, it was to scrub everything to prepare for Saturday's parade and white glove inspection.
Oh, wow.
So she said, if you get everything done, you will be escorted to the men's area for a Jewish service. So came Friday, I got everything done. 2 huge Marines came, male Marines came to escort me to their area. There was a Jewish service. It was very primitive, but...
You were the only female Jewish Marine there?
Yeah, during boot camp.
Amazing.
So...
Wow. And so then they didn't make you go to church ever
No,
again?
I didn't. And one of the plus parts about that, which I didn't know in advance, was we all used to call home on Sunday, but there was always a long line to get to the one telephone.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the only one not in church, so I got to the telephone.
Oh, that's great. So, did you get any specialized training after boot camp?
Not really. Well, I learned how to use the teletype
Yeah.
machine.
Oh, how long did that take to train?
About an hour.
Oh, okay.
You know, it was compared to other things I did later, that was a very simple thing to operate.
Okay. Now, how was it adapting to the...
That was very, in the beginning I adapted even though I wasn't happy about what I was doing. Part of my job, it was clerical.
Uh-huh.
So we had some steno, some, typing, filing, pretty much like any other office you would work in.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that I was responsible for was getting the list of boys who were wounded, prisoner of war, or killed.
Mm.
It's a very difficult thing to adjust to.
Sure. What did you have to do with the lists?
We turned them over to our superiors, who in turn, I guess they made the decision as to which parents should be called and which should be notified and how they were, and then we had to notify them.
Oh.
Once the officers made the decision, we had to, do the notifying,
Wow.
in writing.
Mm-hmm.
They would tell us what they wanted, let's just say.
So you typed up the letters.
Yeah.
Must have been very difficult.
It was difficult. I got to the point where after doing it over a year, one day I saw a name that I knew.
Really?
And that's when I asked for a transfer, because he happened to be the only child of a friend of my mother's.
Oh.
And I felt so bad.
Sure.
So,
Where were you transferred? Well, this was all in Camp Lejeune?
in boot camp.
In boot camp.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. No, this was when I was sent to headquarters. That's where I did the teletype.
Okay. And that was where?
In Arlington, Virginia.
Okay. So you were there about a year in Arlington?
No, I was there the full time.
Oh, the whole
I
time.
was 6 weeks in boot training, and one thing I would like to say about boot training, we were the only woman service who was giving combat training.
Really?
And we did everything that the men did.
No kidding.
The one thing that I thought was interesting, and men went through this too, is that we had to go to class first thing in the morning where we were taught the history and the glory of the Marine Corps.
Wow.
When I got out of the Marines, I figured if you weren't a Marine, you just weren't anything.
Yeah. That's great.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, very.
But no, we did marching, we did calisthenics, we did something, we had to do guard duty.
What about learning to use the weapons?
Oh, that was the most important thing. We had to learn how to clean a weapon and how to use it.
Really?
And we were not given ear protectors, which my daughter, who became a probation officer and also was trained to use firearms, she was given earmuffs to muffle that sound.
Wow.
It was deafening.
Sure.
But there were many other things that we had to do. I think we scaled a ship. Yeah, I think I covered it pretty much. We had to go on a run with our pack on our back and carrying a rifle.
Heavy.
Yeah, it was heavy.
Wow.
But you know, when you're 20 years old, you can do a lot of things.
That's true.
And you don't, and because you're all doing it together, there was a spirit of camaraderie that was wonderful.
Yeah, nice. So this was in Arlington.
This was in boot camp.
In boot camp,
Where
so
we
the
took
training.
the training. That was part of it. I'm sorry, I got ahead,
that's okay.
ahead of myself.
So after 6 weeks of boot camp, then
We were all very excited, waiting to see what our assignments would be. The 8 girls that came from Cleveland were billeted together during boot camp. But we were not, any of us, assigned to the same post. We were split up.
Oh.
So, but you know, you get to know other people.
Did you keep in touch with them?
We all said we're going to keep in touch, but none of us did.
Okay.
You know, you get so busy.
Yeah.
Your days are so full.
So where did you were sent to Arlington?
I was sent to headquarters, Arlington, Virginia. We were billeted at Henderson Hall. That where I was describing the barracks. That's what the barracks were like in Henderson Hall.
I see.
We had several buildings, and there were 4 squad rooms to a building and 90 women to a squad room.
Wow. So it was different in boot camp.
Oh, absolutely. Because of the showers, the stalls. I don't remember the bathroom stalls, but I know the showers were wide open.
In boot camp?
In boot camp.
Oh, okay. So it was more private in
Yeah. So it was not quite that bad. After we were at Henderson Hall about a year, they put a swimming pool in, which
nice.
I loved.
Very nice.
It was wonderful.
So you're actually, the rest of your service was
At Henderson Hall.
in Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, toward the end of VJ Day, so women Marines were not sent overseas before that. But after VJ Day, they opened up Hawaii, and I was very excited. I wanted to go to Hawaii, so I ran in to volunteer, and to my utter amazement, my commanding officer she said, "How would your parents feel?" So I lied. I said they wouldn't mind. She slid the phone across the desk and said, "Call home."
Oh.
My mother heard Hawaii. She probably didn't even know where it was, but she knew it was out of the country, and she was not having her daughter go out of the country.
They were still in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
It was very hard on them. And looking back now, I realize that maybe it wasn't fair to them.
Well, so they had 2 sons in the service at the same time as you?
Well, I went in. My brother went in. Manny went in first, and I went in. Then my brother Harold.
Wow. Well, that's hard.
Yeah, very hard. It was hard on her.
Sure.
Because she had left Niagara Falls with a big family of support, and her family was in Buffalo nearby, and she goes to a city where she didn't know a soul.
Yeah.
So she really...
Why did they pick Cleveland?
My father's brother was a traveling salesman, and my dad lost his grocery store because the first of the supermarkets opened up down the street from his store, an A&P, and he lost all his customers.
Wow.
So it was a painful thing. So he was looking around for something to do, and his brother, who was a traveling salesman, came back and told him about this wonderful city of Cleveland, and he even found a business for him, a diner, a 24-hour diner next door to the Fisher Body plant, which made parts for automobiles at the beginning of the automobile industry.
Wow.
So
the diner was pretty busy from the staff from the plant.
Yeah.
Nice. How long did they have the diner?
A couple of years, and then unfortunately we had the crash of 29. So my dad, I think he took a loss on the diner, but he usually had left to buy a delicatessen, which is like a grocery store, on the west side of Cleveland, where real estate was much cheaper than where we were living, which was the east side of Cleveland. It was not a good move.
Oh.
It was a very difficult time. It was a very anti-Semitic area.
Really?
And both my brothers were bullied because of being Jewish.
Oh.
It was a hard time for the whole family. But, like everything else in life, it finally also came to an end. and I don't remember what happened there. It was next door to a beer parlor, and I don't think my parents were too happy with the whole area. And we lived in a big storeroom behind the store.
Oh.
My mother arranged her furniture in such a way that it delineated each room. But we had to go down the basement to shower. It was very scary.
Oh, wow.
So it was not a happy time, and I guess finally my dad lost that store, and we moved back to the east side. They found an apartment, and that's where we lived.
Ah, okay. Okay, so now, going back to when you were in Arlington, what kind of friendships and camaraderie did you develop there?
I had a wonderful group of friends.
Yeah.
When my first day at Henderson Hall, I had taken off my shirt and I had a Jewish star on, and a woman said, "Oh, I see you're one of the tribe." Well, I didn't know what she was talking about because I never heard that expression before. But she introduced me to the other Jewish girls who were there, and we kind of formed our own little group and did all the things that we were comfortable with.
Nice.
We went to the community centers, we went to the temples, we went to dances. We found a lot of recreation. Washington is an exciting place to be.
Yes.
While I was, one of the things I guess I should bring up, if you're talking about the history of the time, every area that was advertising for women to join the service did not indicate to you. They said the motto was join the service and free a man for active duty to help end the war. Made sense to me. But what they didn't tell you is that men whose desk jobs we were there to take were not happy with us. They really tried to make our life pretty miserable. So the first couple of months were not a happy time.
But why did they do that?
Because they were going to be sent into combat.
Oh, I see.
So you can understand it from their point of view, too.
They'd rather stay and do the desk job.
Right, exactly. So I consoled myself by taking long walks every night after dinner. I'd walk down to the Lincoln Memorial, one of my favorite spots in Washington. And I'd sit on the steps and talk to Abe, and that made me feel better.
Nice.
And somehow I made it through those first 2 months.
Wow.
And after a while, we were accepted. And life went on.
Yeah. Did you live together with those other 7 Marine ladies?
No, they were all in different, about 3 or 4 of them were in my barracks. I was in barracks 4, but the others were in a different barracks. But we all became part of a group.
Nice.
And did things together, which was very nice for us.
Yeah.
So it made us feel a lot more comfortable. And somewhere along at the beginning, that first week, we went over to the mess hall for dinner, and I did my usual eating everything around the meat and not touching the meat. Well, Eleanor said, "Are you a vegetarian?" And I said, "No." She said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "Well, I can't eat non-kosher meat." Tess, grow up! So that was the end of that.
So you ate the meat? You started to eat the meat?
I wouldn't eat pork or ham or anything like that, but I would eat chicken and beef, and I didn't die from it, so I became aware of the fact that it was okay to do.
Okay. And your folks were okay with that? There's nothing they
discussed it. I never discussed it with my mother.
You did?
Never.
You think she would have been upset?
I'm sure she would have been. Maybe my dad would have been more upset. I don't know.
I wonder how your brothers dealt with it.
Well, by then, I don't think they took it as seriously as I did.
Okay.
Because somebody once said, I didn't have a chaplain. We didn't have a Jewish chaplain in the boot camp. And wherever they went, they must have had a chaplain because the big army bases all had them.
Oh, I see.
And they probably went to, we never discussed it, but I'm guessing they went to their chaplain who said, when you're in the army, everything is okay.
Oh,
when you're serving in service, you haven't got a choice.
Right.
So
that's really interesting.
That's what my husband told me, actually. He said that he had discussed it with his chaplain, and he said, the rules changed when you're in the service.
Sure, had to.
I should have had enough sense to figure that out for myself.
But you wanted to follow,
it never even occurred to me. I guess I was so annoyed with myself that I never thought of it. But I will say this, it wouldn't have stopped me from going.
Really?
I will.
Had you known ahead of time, you still would have done
I
it.
absolutely would have. My mother might have made more of a fuss.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well,
But
lucky for us.
I knew what I wanted. There was just no dissuading me. Some of my relatives called my mother and said, "Why don't you tell Tess that you have a weak heart and it'll be bad for you if she goes away?" Mm-hmm. My mother would never do that to me. Oh. I must say, in her defense, she did put up a lot of obstacles. She had to take a lot of criticism from people who said, "You're letting your daughter join the women's services? I'm surprised at you," and comments like that. Mm-hmm. A lot of the boys that I knew said, "If you ever join a women's service, I won't marry you."
Why?
I don't know. I never asked why. I just was so stunned by their reaction. Mm-hmm. Of course, I got a really good answer after a while. I said, "Well, I wouldn't marry you anyway."
That was good. Good.
But, what were you asking?
So, when they said you were a woman in the Marine, they would never marry you.
Yeah, well, I just knew that I was happy where I was. Mm-hmm. I knew I did the right thing. Mm-hmm. I think I matured a great deal being in service. Mm-hmm. Certainly learned a lot.
What did you? Yeah, how did you? What did you learn being a Marine or in the service in general?
I learned that the Marine Corps was the best.
Really? Why do every Marine I've spoken to felt that way, and I'm so impressed.
You get that in boot camp,
really?
I'll tell you.
Why do they drill that in? Why do you think that's true?
It's a spirit de corps.
Nice.
And I think maybe you need that especially if you're going into battle.
Sure.
You need to think that you're there for a good reason.
Yeah.
It's. I think about my feelings when the Vietnam War broke out. Mm-hmm. There were people outside the supermarkets here trying to get you to sign up. I mean, as much as I was pro going into the service and thought it was so important in World War II, I did not feel that way at Vietnam, mm-hmm. and I refused to sign their papers to indicate that I thought that they should be doing that.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought it was a terrible thing, mm-hmm. because I didn't, as much as I wasn't that much into current events, I mean, I read the paper, but I don't delve into it. I knew that was not a good war. Mm-hmm. In World War II, we were attacked. Mm-hmm. There was a reason why we were there. And I didn't even know at that time what was happening to my own people. Mm-hmm. So it just because we were attacked, mm-hmm. I felt that was justifiable for us to be there.
Right.
I will say this, the people who make the decisions in Washington, I often wonder how their children go into service or not. Mm-hmm. And many of them do not.
Right.
I guarantee you our present president isn't sending his kids, mm-hmm. even though he would like to start another war.
Mm-hmm. So, when you were in the service in Arlington, how did you keep in touch with family and friends? Was that hard? Or
I started in boot camp. I started writing to my family once a week and calling once a week.
Nice.
And I just kept that up. And then as life turned out, I would write a lengthy letter, about everything that we were doing and tell mm-hmm. them things that I would have told them if I were there.
And they wrote back?
Yeah. There was no way for my mother to call me in boot camp unless there was an emergency. Mm-hmm. But thank God there was never one. But having said that, once I got out of service, I kept that up, calling my mom and writing once a week. Mm-hmm. So
you mean totally separated from the service when you left the service?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went home for my sister's wedding. Uh-huh. And my mother had all my letters stacked up on the table, and she said, "I want you to read them." I said, "I know what's in them. I don't have to read them." She said, "No, you read them." So I start reading, and every letter was, about the things we're doing and things whatever my life was at that moment. But I always somewhere, while I was still in service, those letters said I went out with this one or that one, and he was a lousy dancer. I'm not going out with him again. So my mother says, "What do you think, that you dance through life?" Well, boy, was she shocked when I brought the man that I was going to marry home.
How did you meet?
How did I meet? When I was ready for discharge, we were told in advance, those of us who had to train a replacement were told that we would be held for 90 days to do that. So when I think the habit at the time was to take men who were in the battle and bring them back and put them into office jobs as a break.
Mm-hmm.
So the man who was in charge of our office really knew nothing about office procedure. So when the list of people who had enough points for discharge was sent to him, he just signed the whole list and passed it on. So even though I had been told differently, I very strongly learned the lesson of not questioning any order.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm losing my...
So you were getting ready to be discharged.
Yeah. And I had my barracks bag half packed. We had the group of 8 girls that were, we had formed a little group. We all decided one of them was getting married and moving to Colorado. So we decided we'd all go to college in Colorado and keep our group together for a while.
Nice.
So I sent my papers in. I was really all prepared to be discharged on Monday.
This was
1946. On Friday, a new list went up. We had dates on Sunday to go and celebrate my discharge. Mm-hmm. So on Friday, a new list went up. The following will serve 90 more days to train a replacement. So I was a little bit
So
depressed.
you were on that list.
Yeah, I was on that list too.
And the others weren't.
No.
Oh.
Well, they really weren't in as long as I did. I had more points than any of them.
So you were supposed to be
Yeah.
discharged.
So, I guess I felt a little sad. So the morning that we had dates to go out and celebrate this discharge that I wasn't getting, my bunkmate said, let's go down to 8th and I and spend the day until it's time to meet our dates. 8th and I was a temple that became a USO on Sundays.
Oh.
So we went in there, we walked by the ping pong room, and a ball hit me on the shoulder, and I tossed it back, and that's how I met my husband.
No kidding. This was in Arlington.
Arlington.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Why was he there?
He was in the Army very early. He was in about 7 or 8 battles in North Africa, and at the end of the last battle, he was shot in the upper thigh, and they severed a main artery.
Ooh.
So he was due for amputation.
Mm.
The first doctor that saw him said hip, meaning they were going to, because the wound was so high, they were going to take the leg off at the hip.
Oh.
But between that time and the time that he was actually sent to a place where they were going to do the surgery, another doctor that saw him said, he is young, he is strong, let's wait and see where the gangrene sets in.
Oh,
we
my
know how
God.
much of the leg is still healthy.
Wow.
So for 30 days he lay there in absolute agony until they had to put him on some kind of medication to dope him up. But finally the gangrene did set in, and it showed that most of the knee was still healthy. Mm-hmm. So he was able to get the below knee amputation.
Oh, wow.
He was absolutely mortified to think that he was losing his leg. He was a walker, a ball player.
Were you already engaged or married?
I didn't know him at that point.
I see. Okay.
So he wrote a book. He decided, he came home. He used to be a fur cutter before the war. A fur cutter.
Fur.
But he couldn't do that anymore because he couldn't stand on his legs.
Oh.
So he went to, he got some advice, and he was told there was a course starting at American University in Washington to train him to be a service officer for the Disabled American Veteran Group.
Oh.
So he decided to do that. And one day he was there, and he heard on the radio that this temple had a USO that became, they could get brunch free.
Oh.
So that's why he was there with his friends and
Wow.
playing ping pong, even though his balance was very poor because he was getting used to the new leg.
Sure. So he had a prosthesis?
He had a prosthesis. It was a murderous prosthesis. It was made out of wood, so it was very heavy. They had leather corseting that fit around his thigh, and a belt that fit around his stomach. So summers were really very difficult because they would sweat from all this stuff,
Sure.
and the leg was so heavy, and the leg wasn't waterproof. So they had to take it off to get into the shower, which was difficult.
Was he in pain a lot of the time?
He had a lot of pain because he had, in fact, 6 weeks before we were married, he had to go back for a revision on his stump because it was bleeding.
Oh.
So he had a lot of discomfort from that leg and a lot of mental anguish.
Sure.
In those courses where everything, they had to be trained so that if they ended up at an office way out in the boondocks somewhere where they had no help, they could do everything to run that office. So they took English, they took law, the veterans law. It was a comprehensive course. And the English teacher who came from one of the colleges here in New York had them all write their experiences. And he wrote a book, a story called The Expanse of White Linen. It was his feeling on waking up after the surgery and seeing that the sheet was raised where one foot was and flat where there was no foot.
Wow.
He said he was busy feeling sorry for himself when he looked across the way and saw the man in the bed next to him who had been burned from head to foot. And he said to himself, "You jerk, what are you so upset about? You only lost a leg. You can still go on living.
Wow.
He will not be able to go on living." So that was a lesson for him. He was a gutsy man.
Yeah.
He always handled whatever was thrown at him.
Wow.
I thought he also had a beautiful voice.
Yeah, oh, he sang.
I think that's what got me.
Yeah.
Well, I met him that day
Yes.
that I was supposed to be discharged. We sat around talking because he couldn't play ping pong too long. And, he was telling me about some of the veterans' rights, that what we should do with them. And, one thing that impressed me about him, a lot of the dates that I went on, they were not conversationalists. You would say something and you get a flat one-word answer. And it became very, very exhausting to try to keep it so. I didn't have that problem with him. He could carry both sides of a debate all by himself.
Nice. Where was his family from? Where?
New York,
Ah.
Bronx.
Oh, okay. So how long after that did you get married?
Well, that was November 1st when we met.
November 1st?
November 1st.
Oh, I thought you were discharged February
I was
1946.
discharged in February. Or maybe I got the year wrong. No, I know I was... I met him November 1st of 1945.
Oh, okay.
That's why. And he took my phone number. He wanted to take me out that night, and I said, I have a date tonight. So he took my phone number, and he did not call me all week. So I figured, not the first time, not the last time. But the following Saturday, there was a big dance at the community center, and I had a date with a boy also from New York. And they had a band, so they had an intermission. We were wandering around this building, and I thought it was Nelson Eddy singing. I was a big Jeanette MacDonald Nelson Eddy fan. So I said, let's go up there and listen, until the band comes back. We go up, and there's my husband sitting on a piano. A USO girl was playing. They went on for, I guess, the rest of the night. He sang more that night than ever since I knew him.
Wow. Did he have musical training? Or?
Yeah, he had some, but then he was trained as a cantor.
Oh, wow.
So that was what he had expected to do when he got home, but then once he lost his leg, he figured he couldn't stand on his legs that long.
Oh.
He actually met Madeline Carroll, the movie star, who wanted to put him up in show business.
No kidding.
When she heard his voice.
Wow.
He in his family of 4 children, 3 of them had magnificent, high-quality operatic voices.
Wow.
His brother was a tenor, his sister was a coloratura soprano, and he was a bass baritone.
Wow.
It was
So what year did you get married?
1946.
Oh, right after your discharge?
It was 6 months from when we met to when we got married.
Wow.
And 3 of those months I was back home.
And he was still working for the service?
He was working for the Disabled American Veterans.
Right. Okay.
He had graduated. I went to his college graduation.
Where did he go
was
to?
at
American? Or?
Well, he graduated from the American U,
Yeah.
but this was the cathedral in Washington,
Oh, yeah.
where they had, these were all wounded veterans that graduated from that class.
Oh.
And it was he was asked to do the keynote song.
Oh.
It was so moving, and his voice, without any microphones, just filled that chapel up.
Beautiful.
It was just beautiful. My kid brother had come to visit me on his way overseas, so he was with me that day.
Nice. Now, speaking of that, after your service, how did you return home from Arlington?
Well, when I finally got discharged, February 14th, he had just proposed to me.
Oh, on Valentine's Day?
Uh-huh.
So how did you get home? To Cleveland? You had to go back to Cleveland?
My older brother had gotten out of service, and he was living in New York. He was in the dress line. And he was living, in fact, while I was still in the barracks, he sent me my first civilian dress,
Oh.
which was a lot of fun.
So you went to New York to see
I went
him?
to New York to meet my husband's family.
Oh.
And then I went to stay with my brother for a few weeks just to, spend some time with him.
How were you received by family and friends when you got out of the service?
Everybody was happy that I was home.
Yeah.
Everybody made a big fuss over me, which was nice. And one of my girlfriends was getting married, so she said, please come in your uniform.
Did you? How was it adjusting to civilian life?
I didn't have any problem. You know what the biggest change was? Women were wearing earrings, and I had never had earrings.
Oh.
Everything only changed. Otherwise, I went back to... My brother took me while I was still staying with him. He took me to the warehouse where the line that he was representing housed their clothes when they were made. He says, help yourself.
Oh,
I went from one rack to the other. I'll take this in blue, this in pink, this in yellow. I had the most glorious wardrobe.
I bet. When
All summer clothes, of course.
summer, it was coming up
Yeah.
summer. Did you go back to Cleveland then,
Yes, then-
before you were married?
Yeah, I went back to my job at Halley's.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, that was quite a shocker because the woman who, there was a line that I very much admired. It was called Friendship. I think it was called Friendship, something like that. And it was a very light, airy, Milkmaid. It was
Okay.
the Milkmaid line. And it was a very light, airy cosmetic. It wasn't, heavy, thick stuff. And I loved that line, and I probably sold more of her line for her than anybody else. So she was ready to retire, and I found out when I came back to work that she had stayed on so that she could give her spot to me.
Wow, isn't that nice?
She thought I would be so
Wow.
good for that line.
Wow. So when you went back to Cleveland, then you told your folks about getting married?
Well, while I was still in service, my husband found an ad in the Sunday paper that somebody was driving to Cleveland, Ohio for some kind of races, and he was looking for people to share the ride. So he said, I know you want me to meet your family, so if you want to go, let's go.
Nice.
So he walked out of the law exam.
Oh, my God.
He was taking the exam, and he realized that he had to still pick me up and meet this guy. And he said, and the professor said to him, where are you going, Garber? You didn't finish. He says, can't help it. I'm going to meet my new in-laws.
Oh, nice.
So he did well on the test anyway. He had a great mind. He had a photographic memory.
Wow.
So we got to Cleveland. He met my family. That was the shock for my mother. After all my letters about not wanting to go out with somebody that wasn't a good dancer, and here I'm bringing home a guy who has one leg.
Wow.
She was not happy.
Oh.
She kept saying to me, how's he going to make a living for you? I said, I'm not worried about it, so don't you.
Oh, wow. And they ended up liking him.
Oh, yeah. They all loved him.
So how do you think, so did you remain in contact with any of your fellow Marines?
Yeah, we stayed in very close touch.
Nice.
All that group of eight. I went to visit Ray, I know, in Washington, and Eleanor. Oh, they none of them came to my wedding. I think it was just a time when they couldn't get away. But Phyllis, my bunkmate, got married 6 months later, and three of us, Eleanor, Molly, and me, met my husband,
Oh.
and he drove us all to the wedding in,
Oh, how
in
nice.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
What, your what?
No,
Oh, her wedding.
my bunkmate's
Oh,
wedding.
well, nice. Very nice.
So, yeah, and in fact, I saw her. My husband was doing a cantoral. He became a part-time cantor. He felt he could do it. He could handle it, like, for the high holidays. But he had already started a business, so he didn't want to give that up. So he was doing something in Baltimore.
Oh.
And he was doing a service in Baltimore. So Phyllis met me there with her daughter. So I met her daughter.
Nice.
Her son moved to Hawaii.
Yeah.
That I never got to.
You didn't get to go?
He was a psychiatrist, I think, and he still lives there. I've talked to him a couple of
Oh,
times.
that's nice. Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
I'm a member of the Jewish War Veterans. I belong to the Women Marine
Association?
Association. I think that's about it, because my husband was not, he didn't even want to join the Jewish War Veterans
Is that
because
right?
he became very disenchanted with the disabled American veterans.
Oh.
They wanted to make him head of appeals. He was a good speaker, and he did some very clever things to try to help veterans. One boy was denied, I think he had a wound. He didn't lose the leg, but the leg was practically useless. And he was not given a pension. So my husband, in order to prove that he deserved one, went in front of the panel and said, I am going to take my leg off and we'll see who can get across there faster.
Wow.
And of course he did, because he popped and this guy could barely drag that leg along.
Wow.
So he did a lot of clever things.
Wow. Very
to help
determined.
him. But he finally decided, he said, if you weren't drunk on Gypsy Lee gin by 10 in the morning, you didn't fit into the crowd.
Oh.
So he really wanted to go back to New York. So he knew somebody in the VA there who grabbed him, and they, without even taking the civil service test, they hired him
To do what?
to advocate for veterans.
Nice.
He had the training, and
Wow.
it was a good use of it.
So let me ask you something. What do you think were some life lessons you learned from the military?
Life lessons. Following orders.
Following orders.
That was an absolute... At one point, my daughter came home from high school one day. I was taking a bubble bath, and she stood outside the door. She says, you know what, Mom? They had recruiters talking to us today. You think I should join the Marines?
Oh.
I did not answer.
Oh.
I could not answer because I know she had my husband's personality more than mine.
Oh.
And I figured if she couldn't take orders, she was not going to be a happy person. And I just didn't answer. And she forgot all about it
Really?
quickly.
Okay.
But the truth is, in retrospect, she might have been good because she could have made it through boot camp. She would have, especially if we went after college, she could have become an officer. That she would have been good at.
Yeah.
So I've had regrets about that.
Yeah. How do you think your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
I can't say that my service made a difference, but getting older has made a difference. I don't approve of war. I sit in temple every Saturday and read that part about we will turn the ammunition, the rifles into plowshares, and I'm waiting for that to happen because I think man killing man is so unfair. And it's older people who are sending young people into war. Why must the economy improve just because we're having a war? Because frankly, that's bottom line why we have a lot of these wars. Economics, absolutely.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear this interview?
That I do think what Israel does is very clever. When children get out of high school, they go immediately into the Israel Defense Forces. So they have that 2-year period to mature. So by the time they do go to college, they're serious about college. They've already been away from home. They've broken the party era. So I definitely feel that that is a good thing to do. I think that kids should be doing that. They get out of high school, there should be something. The Peace Corps was a good idea. The going in for training, being trained in case, God forbid, there is a war and you have to go, you should have this training under your belt.
Yeah.
I think just the idea of learning to take orders, that was so impressed on us that I think that I know that I matured during that 3-year period.
Sure.
I absolutely did. It changed my whole, I was very shy.
Really?
I don't know where I even got the nerve to join the Marines. I remember my best friend, when I told her, I said, you want to go with me? She said, are you kidding? I mean, they thought I was crazy.
Really?
They couldn't understand. I mean, my
So she
brothers
didn't.
were,
Your best friend didn't go.
no, nobody that I knew went.
Yeah.
I was the only one in the whole group that, of kids that I grew up with that went into service. And there were a couple of boys that were among those that didn't want me to go in. They thought it was not proper for a girl to be in service.
You're kidding.
I don't know what their reasoning. I think when the wax first started, there was a lot of rumors that went around. And that was probably very unfair to them. But it gave people the wrong impression of why we were there.
Yeah. And you were in 3 years?
It was close to 3 years.
Close to 3 years. Yeah. Is there anything you feel we haven't discussed or anything else you'd like to share from your service days?
I like the fact that, being in Washington, we were part of everything that was going on. We were called upon to march in various parades. I even marched in President Roosevelt's funeral.
Did you really?
Wow. So it was a good, and we were, very important thing. We weren't just used for office jobs. On our time off, on weekends, we would be trucked into the farms in Virginia where they were lacking help because most of their workers were off in the services.
Wow.
I chopped trees down, I drove a tractor, I planted, I harvested, I painted a barn. I mean, I had all kinds of interesting experiences. And in fact, the first night we did that in this squadron of 90 women, you heard timber!
Oh, nice. So this was really on your off time?
Yes. Yes.
So it
was not required of us.
Oh, I see.
But it was something that we volunteered to do.
Nice. And most people probably did.
Yes, because it was a good experience and we were needed. I mean, why did we join the service to begin with? Because we were needed.
Did the families know when you came you were from the Marines?
Yeah, we had fatigues.
Oh, you wore your fatigue?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's really wonderful.
It was a good experience. Then the other thing that I thought was very important, not only to a lot of people but to me personally, on weeknights they would have a bus going to Walter Reed and to different hospitals where they were bringing the wounded in. Again, the first night was brutal. I mean, you could hear sobbing right through the whole barracks that night because we saw the results of war.
Yeah.
And that was a hard touch, very hard.
Wow. Did you do that on a regular basis?
Yeah.
You did? Wow.
Yeah.
And just to talk with the soldiers? And
Well, we would, the boys who lost their sight, we would write letters for them, we would read to them. The boys who had lost different parts of their body, we would do whatever was required that they needed to have help with. Some of the boys were getting used to walking on their new prosthesis, some we would give them a chance to practice by taking us for a little walk. It was, the most important thing I think that we did was just sit and talk.
Yeah.
They wanted to talk. They wanted to tell you their experiences.
Nice.
And so this gave them an outlet to somebody that would sit and listen to them before they got home to their families, which a lot of them were dreading. Those who had very serious wounds were not looking forward to having to show this to their families.
Sure. Wow.
So,
Did you do that throughout your service? They had you do that?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an important part of my life at that time. In fact, at one point I was thinking of taking some courses, but I couldn't because I couldn't interrupt my schedule of going to the hospital. I thought that was more important then. I didn't spend too much time in the amp ward, and I know that my husband was there when I was going there.
But you didn't really know each other.
I didn't know him then.
Wow.
The only thing I could think of when he told me where he was located, I remember there was a guy in there that used to make a lot of noise, and I'm sure it was him.
That's funny. Well, thank you. You've really been very interesting, and thank you for all you did for all of us. We appreciate
I
it.
did it for me too. I mean, it was something I needed to do. I knew from, I guess, the time I was 15, 16 years old that this is what I wanted to do.
No kidding. Wow.
I just did. It was because of Israel.
Really?
That was really what put me on that
That was
path.
motivating.
Yeah.
Where were you? I forgot to ask you, where were you when the war ended? World War
It
II.
was, where was I?
You were still in service.
Yeah, I was still in service, and I had a furlough, and I went to Cleveland. It was in August, the end of August.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of my friends had a cottage on the lake. And I was on the beach when I heard that the war was over.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, it was, because it's a strange thing to do.
Yeah. Well,
But, you know, it was, I did make a lot of good friends.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the purpose of going in. I always had a lot of friends, so that wasn't my purpose in joining the service. I really believe that I was just my my mother's lessons to us. I don't think there was a day of our life that in some way she didn't tell us how lucky we were to be born in this country and how important family was to stick together. So how did 4 of us end up in 4 states? But we stayed together
We stayed in touch.
very close.
Yes.
Very close. We talked to each other once a week. We all went to everything that the family was going to be at. My husband promised my mother that anything the family was doing, he would get me there, and he did.
Nice.
He really fulfilled that.
What a wonderful family you're from.
Yeah,
And
it was. It really was.
Well, thank you, Tess. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was very interesting. I'm getting the benefits of having been in service in my old age.
Yeah. That was not on here? Okay. Just a second.
It's been interesting.